It's 3 days to election 2024. The long wait is over. It was just 4 years ago, is it not, that we went to the polls to determine who should lead the country, both at the presidential and parliamentary level. Now, Ghanaians are going to the polls on Saturday, December 7, to decide who leads the country at the presidential level and who represents them in parliament, 276 constituencies, that is. Ahead of that, media has prepared and deploying to cover the election so that when you're in your home, you get to see what is happening out there. But we are not doing this work alone. There are a group of CSOs that have also decided to join this particular exercise. Indeed, they have been covering our electoral process for decades, and even before the Constitution was introduced, they have been very much a part of it. Over the period, we have one group that has been observing elections domestically and giving us feedback on how the election process has been. That group is a coalition of domestic election observers, CODEO, but it is a subset of a bigger group called the Center for Democratic Development Ghana, CDD. So today we are actually operating from the strong room, I'm using that word advisedly, of CDD and CODEO, where they're going to monitor the election, the observers that they have deployed. And so if you look at the background, I'm not really in the studio as I would typically be with you on Face-to-Face. My name is Umaru, Sanda, Amadu. This is ChannelOne Television. This is Face-to-Face, and you're welcome. I'm going to introduce my guest after this. So my guest is Dr. Kojo Asante. He is wearing two hats for this interview today. He's a Director of Policy Engagement and Partnerships at the Center for Democratic Development, CDD. But he's also the director of the Secretariat of CODEO, the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers. He's my guest on Face-to-Face. Hello, Doc. It's 3 days to the big day. We've been working towards this, haven't we? I don't know if the excitement in the CSO is as much as we have in the media, because for us, it's like the single biggest day in every 4 years.
How will you use the word excitement?
So excitement not in I'm happy, but excitement as in you've worked towards it, it is time, and you have to deliver because your viewers depend on you. They rely on whatever you churn out.
Yes.
And so it's a single most important day perhaps in every 4 years. And I'm sure for every Ghanaian too, because we are choosing a leader.
That's right. Yeah, and we have been at it since the beginning of the year when the biometric voter registration process started. So it's been a long journey, and as you say, we have only 3 days to go.
Yeah.
And of course, the intensity of the activities obviously showing. So we say we are ready. We're just testing our systems, getting ready for December 7th on Saturday.
Where are we? What is this? This center is what?
So this is the CODEO National Information Center. It is basically the heartbeat of our observation activity. We are deploying 4,000 observers across all the constituencies, and we are using a database system called the Apollo, which allows us to receive information from all the 4,000 observers and help us to be able to interpret it and assess both the quality of the electoral process on the day, but also to independently verify the presidential results.
Okay, let's talk about the checklist. So what are the things you look out for? If I, journalist, go to the voting center, first of all, I check in the morning, have the electoral material been brought? Yes, check. Are the EC officers here? Check. Are the polling agents here? Check. Are voters here? Yes. Oh, they came about 3 hours before the opening of polls. Some brought stones and came to queue and all of those things. What about the security presence? How are the security personnel behaving? What is the issue of law and order? When people finish voting, do they go home? Do they hang around and follow this process through to sorting, counting, declaration, and all of that? What is the checklist that you work with?
It's not different. So throughout the day, there will be about 7 text messages our observers will send when they arrive. And normally they arrive at 6 a.m. because voting starts at 7. So we want them to be there to observe whether the poll workers are there, preparing the setup, and that's where they also check things like voter register, what other registers are there, do you have an ink pad, you have all of those things. So the whole setup process, the opening of polling, the voting process, the counting process, the results process, and all of that. So it's not so dissimilar from what you have just described, but there's a lot more information that they are gathering. There's so many things. So for example, for the first time, we are going to have a missing list. which is those who actually have a card, but they are not on the biometric system. So they can't use the biometric system, verification system, to identify them. They would have to use manual, you know. And so these are all different things you have to check out. And then even when there's closure, you go through all the lists to make sure that you can account for every ballot. So everything, how many people are verified by the machine, how many people are verified manually, you know, how many rejected ballots, how many spoiled ballots. Every single ballot has to be accounted for, and we train our observers to check all of those things. When they finish, they paste the result sheet, summary result sheet, on, you know, a visible place for everybody to see. So it's very, very specific, and we encourage them to focus on that job only and nothing else. Okay. You know, because maybe you turn away a few minutes, and then you have something happen in the polling station which you have not observed. So that's what we'll be doing. At midday on the 7th, we normally issue a midday statement at noon. And the whole idea is to be able to report on the opening of polls and the setup. We want Ghanaians to know what is happening generally across the country in terms of how many polling stations have opened, what time did they open. Because that always gives you a sense of how the election is going to go. If materials are there, poll workers have arrived, by 7, 8 a.m., polls are open, then you know you have already a good election going.
So you monitor from morning to midday. You issue a half-day report.
A half-day report.
And then the next report comes at what time?
It will come after 5, when the close of polls. We call it the close of polls statement. And that will be just a press release. And then the next day, we issue what we call a preliminary statement report. That would have covered the process of counting, some of the results already trickling in. And then we're able to release our PVT data on turnout and rejected ballots. So we can estimate the turnout and rejected ballots by the next morning, you know, when we have our preliminary statement. And that also is to indicate to everybody that we know what has happened, and we are watching the process to allow the Electoral Commission, you know, to also do its part.
So you have 4,000 observers. Who are these observers?
So CODEO is made up of 42 different organizations.
Okay.
It's a mixture of almost everybody that you know, the Teachers Association, CLOSAC, midwives, nurses, accountants, religious body, the Charismatics, Chief Imam's Office, Muslim Association, NGOs, even the student groups like NUS, youth groups, women's groups. So about 42.
They help you recruit observers, or they send you volunteers?
So the criteria is we recruit from our organizations. Okay. And that helps us because the observer knows that they are not just representing themselves, they are also representing their institutions.
So their credibility.
Their credibility becomes important. And that's one of the things that have kept CODEO's integrity and reputation over the years. So everybody that goes there has to account not just to CODEO, but to the organization itself. And if anything happens, we know also where to go and hold people accountable. So they are the ones that go to, we have a recruitment committee from the advisory board, which is made up of about 25 people, independent people, but also represent some of the largest groups like NAT, NAGRAT, CLOSAC, the midwives, the churches. They're able to supply us a lot. But even Amnesty International, they all are able to supply us observers across the country.
So they are trustworthy, they are neutral people, or they are fair, not necessarily neutral, but you trust that they will not be biased in their reportage to you.
Sure, that is what we insist in terms of the recruitment, but of course we are not naive. We put in all kinds of systems to check whether or not people are not partisan. So for example, we recruit from the electoral area. So if you have there's a polling station in the electoral area, within 4 polling stations, that's where you have to come for many different reasons. If there are any challenges during the election, you need to be able to know where you're going. So if you don't live in the community, you don't come from the community, you don't know the actors in the space, it'd be difficult for you.
Oh, so you don't send a stranger, you don't send someone from Accra to Western North?
No.
You localize the observers?
We have to localize the observer. It also ensures that the observer is able to get to their polling station at that 6 a.m. If you are living so far away, that becomes a problem, So trying to recruit within the electoral area, and also if you are partisan, everybody will know that you have been engaged in active party politics. So if they see you wearing a CODEO t-shirt, they'll say no, they can't believe.
So your people are identified by their shirts?
Yes.
They have tags?
They have the accreditation.
So the EC gives you accreditation for your 4,000 people?
That's right.
What is a CODEO structure?
Yeah.
So there's a base and there's a top. How do you, and also the systems you have in place to ensure the safety measures?
So you have the advisory board, which I mentioned, is the 25-member advisory board.
For just CODEO, not CDD?
No, just CODEO, right? So CDD is the secretariat. It's like your implementing
the policy directives.
But the policy directives comes from the advisory board, which is co-chaired by Reverend Dr. Debe and then Mrs. Elizabeth Villas. And then you have other members, Sheikh Aremiao, Professor Jibabuedi. There's a lot of
members of the advisory board.
Mr. Kwansing, all members of the advisory board. And then we try to make sure that there's enough diversity. And so we have Abantu represented for women's group, we have youth group, youth bridge then we have the Ghana Federation of Disabled also represented to make sure that some of the things that we prioritize, like we have a minimum quota for persons with disability, which is 10% of all observers, a minimum quota for women, which is 30% for all observers, and also we try to have as many as 50% youth observers in total. So all these things is to ensure that it's a very inclusive process. We're able to get everybody involved in the process. But as you say, in terms of the hierarchy, then you have the board, you have recruitment committees that help with the recruitment, but you also have a finance procurement committee, you have a drafting committee, then you have the secretariat at the base. And then the secretariat on the field, you have 31 regional coordinators.
Even though we have 16 regions?
Yes, because some regions are big and you need more coordinators. Then we have 276 constituency supervisors. So every constituency has a supervisor. Then you have 276 constituency collation observers. So they are trained separately to be at the collation center. You have 16 regional collation center observers. Then you have 1,500 PVT observers.
What is PVT?
So PVT is the parallel vote tabulation. What it does is that we combine statistical sampling with SMS technology that allows us to basically code the questions that we are talking about into an SMS message, and then it comes into the system, and we're able to then generate statistics out of it. The sample that is generated is a nationally representative sample of all voters. So every polling station represents a certain percentage of voters. So you have to mimic all of that in the entire 40,000.
Before you even deploy, you are deliberate about where to send. You just don't send people across.
No.
So while you are doing the monitoring, you are also behaving like a pollster.
Yes.
So you are doing your sampling properly.
Very much so. So it's stratified. So if Greater Accra represent 20% or 15% or 18% of total voters, it has to show the same representation in your sample. So we stratify at region, at constituency, and then we get the right kind. And then maybe within a margin of error of plus or minus 2, you're able to estimate what the result will be for the candidates.
So it's your purpose to monitor the quality and transparency of the election, or you are doing exit poll on election day?
No, it cannot be an exit poll because, so first of all, we are monitoring the quality of the process. So if you monitor everything from opening, closing, to the voting process, one of the things you can tell is later in the counting, if in all your polling stations, 97% of party agents signed the final results, you are more likely to have a more accurate count at the end. If you see that only 50% sign, then you should expect that you're going to have a lot of problems. So there are many ways in which you can track the quality of the process to determine whether the outcome is going to be credible, right? And I say it's not an exit poll because this is actually taking the results, the actual results of the polling station, not asking people who they voted for.
So that's, okay, so you're not asking after they vote, you ask them, who did you vote for?
No. This is what
so you're getting the real result. So
what is announced.
So a mini result.
Yes.
Do you release it immediately after the polls or you wait? How do you manage the issue of calling the election versus waiting for the Electoral Commission to do the right way? Yeah. So if you have the data, then what? What do you do with it? So
there's a protocol. The Electoral Commission is legally mandated to declare results. We know that in practice and convention, it takes 72 hours. That's the window within which the Electoral Commission.
Close 3 days.
Yes. So we respect that, right? So, but we also indicate that we have gathered and estimates that our system shows that we have the information. And that's why on the 8th, we're able to release turnout data and rejected ballots. It's to give you an indication that
you know what
we know what we are doing.
So it means that by the 8th, you already would have had a mirror of the election results.
Yeah, I mean, normally throughout the evening, we would have gotten the results.
And this is margin of error?
Yeah, it's a margin of error of plus or minus. Normally when you get the data, then it will give you the margin of even between candidates.
And over the decades that you've been doing this, it's been accurate?
Extremely accurate. Even in 2008 when we had 3 elections, in the sense that we had the first round, second round. It was accurate both on the first election, second election, third election. And both the MPP and NDC have used our data for their petitions in 2013 and in 2020.
So why don't you release it if you have it and it's accurate and you trust it? Why don't you release it so that people will not be sitting on the edge? So that people will say, oh, since CODEO has said it and CODEO in the past has been credible and accurate, what CODEO says is going to tally with what the EC would say, so that the suspicion that the EC wants to cook the figures, all those suspicions would go.
I think it's always important that we allow our state institutions to function and function effectively. The CODEO's work, like any observer group, is to complement what the Electoral Commission and other mandated state institutions are supposed to do. So you have to respect that, all the time and support the process so that integrity. So the Electoral Commission knows that there is a check, right? CODEO's PVT is a check on whatever they deliver. So
they're mindful of how they act.
Exactly. So the process, you just have to respect the process and help the process along. Now, of course, if at any point in time you feel like there is something untoward happening, then you have to look at some of the protocols. But what we have done is that we are always we are tracking and engaging with the Electoral Commission all throughout. 2016, I remember when the Electoral Commission released turnout figures, that was inaccurate. And we're able to tell them that it's inconsistent with what we have. And when they check their results, they realize that, they needed to look at their calculation again.
But if you have to wait till EC releases their results officially before you come out, what will be the use of yours then?
I think it's important because even, as you say, when the Electoral Commission releases, there is always challenges about whether or not it's accurate or not. And we always say that, yes, the collation process may introduce certain variables that we are not aware of, but we take it from the polling station. So it's not contaminated,
So it's raw data.
It's the raw data from the polling station.
You do the analysis here yourself.
We do the analysis here. We have our protocol, our security system, everything to make sure that there is consistency. And we build a lot of consistency checks, historical data, parties. I've seen some of the stuff that you you're doing on city situation and all the analysis. So when you build in, when you see anomalies, you can tell, you know,
can tell that something is wrong somewhere.
Something is wrong, you know. There are many ways of checking whether something is wrong. But I think the importance of it, and I think everybody, every stakeholder agrees that the polling station data, because of the way we do it, we count it openly and we announce it openly. When we finish, we put it in. So, and you see the data even for, we've been doing this since 2008 when we deployed the first PVT. Most of the time, 98%, the poll workers, the agents would have signed and agreed to the polling station result.
So it's credible.
It's only when you start going up in the collation where all these challenges become.
Did you deploy on the special voting day?
Yes, we deployed all our CSs, our constituency supervisors, to go and observe. So about 276.
But not the 4,000 that you deploy on Saturday?
No.
Okay. No. I'll come back and talk about that. This is Face to Face on ChannelOne Television. My name is Umaru, Sanda. Amadu. My guest is Dr. Kojo Asante of the CDD. We are at the Asante. This is where they'll be doing the observation of the election. In fact, they are doing a simulation exercise. So if you're hearing any noise in the background, it's because they are simulating the process on Saturday, which media houses also do in preparedness for the election day. I'll ask him how the special voting process went based on everything they've observed, and also the process leading up to today and indeed to Saturday. How has it been? Transparent, fair, and all of that, comparing it with past elections. Are we improving? Are we retrogressing? And the media involvement and all of those issues. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Please stay. Yeah, welcome back. This is Face to Face on ChannelOne Television. My name is Umaru Sanda. My guest is Dr. Kojo Asante of the CDD and also CODEO. We've walked through the deployment procedure for CODEO on election day and even before election day, which is also very important. So before election day, I want to talk about the process leading up to today. When do you start your monitoring process? Is it as soon as the declaration is done for the last election, or you give yourself time and say when the EC start compiling the register? What are the key highlights for you during this monitoring process? Because election day may be the climax, but that's not the main thing.
No, and normally when elections are over, we will normally convene a national workshop, which is a post-election workshop, to review every aspect of the electoral process. And that is supposed to help us generate recommendations for all stakeholders as to what should we work on before the next election. So the last election, for instance, there were many things that we identified that we wanted to work on, but for about 2 years, we worked on some very specific things. One of the things was, you know, how to standardize the process for correcting errors on the result sheet. Because in 2020, that became some of the issues that led to parliamentary petitions and so on and so forth. Returning officers were using their discretion to sort of deal with these matters, and it created a lot of confusion. So this time around, I mean, we've engaged the Electoral Commission and other stakeholders. The arrangement, we wanted a separate sheet called a correction sheet, maybe in a different color, that when you make a mistake, you know, instead of cancelling out and so on and so forth, you fill a correction sheet that allows all the party agents and other stakeholders to sign, so that we know that this is a corrected sheet. Unfortunately, I think it was late in the day, and it cost money to do another security printing for that separate sheet.
So that we'll have a pink sheet and maybe a blue sheet.
A blue sheet or whatever it is you call it. But so the arrangement is that, okay, you treat it like a check. You cancel and sign against it. At the polling station, you are using a blue pen. When you get to the collation center, they'll use a red pen.
Okay.
If you go to regional, they use a red pen.
Okay.
So that it also shows if there's been any distinction in the correction on the sheet. And that helps, and that should be the standard across. So at least we've managed to achieve that. The other thing is we wanted polling station data published after the election. We've not published polling station data since the Fourth Republic began. And that is quite strange, because there are countries that we don't even compare ourselves to that publish polling station data.
When you say publish polling data, what does that mean?
You know, when the elections are done, most of the data you get is constituency level aggregated data. You don't get polling station by polling station data.
So the publication here is not just on a tree near the polling station or a wall on the, you want it
on the website,
updated on the uploaded to
so which the Electoral Commission has now committed to do.
So they've agreed
that they would publish polling station data after this election.
And why do we need that?
I think it's important, in many ways, to sort of tracking things like overvoting, ballot staffing or any kind of issues, because that kind of transparency begin to sort of discipline people that want to do things at the polling station that in the aggregation you may not be able to identify. Or it's also for just analysis, what patterns are we seeing in terms of the way votes happen and all of that
stuff. So the EC adopted this?
Yeah, I mean, the EC has agreed, and I think they even agreed on that very early, that they were going to commit themselves to publishing this time around.
What other innovative things are we going to see in this election, or have we seen during this compilation of the register and all of those things?
I mean, I don't know whether it's innovation, but one of the things that we also identified was that the setup of the collation center, we needed to change it a bit, particularly in urban areas where you have about 200 or more polling stations that people are now coming back to the collation center to, submit their returns. So what happened between 2016 and 2020 was that we added over 10,000 polling stations. And since that reduced the number of voters per polling station to about 750. But what that did was that it increased the processing time.
The pressure on the
collation center, because there were more polling stations now that you have to account for. And in a lot of places, people stay in queues for long. And some are tired, and and I remember there was a case where the guy was hungry and tired, and his house was just behind.
And he had brought the ballot box waiting for it to be collected.
Because when you are submitting it, you cannot leave it.
Yeah.
As a presiding officer, you can't leave it for anybody. So he thought he could take it and just go, and people thought he was running away with and he was nearly lynched.
So for people who may not be familiar with our system, when a constituency has about 10,000 polling stations, all of them would send their boxes and their pink sheets to the collation, and they are in a queue.
Yes.
So polling station A came first. So we'll process you, and then next people come.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that the time that is spent at the collation center becomes longer.
And then it gets crowded, because not only are they coming with their ballot boxes, they are coming with their screens, they are coming with, and if all
the agents will follow.
Yes, so you have 5 poll workers, maybe it might be 3 of them that are coming. They have all these things, and you can't leave all these equipment because you have to account for them. And the collation center is set up in a way that there are officers there, and maybe just one officer that is checking all of these 200. And in an urban center, because the distances are short, all 200 can be there within maybe the next 2 hours. And that creates a lot of, so we have engaged the Electoral Commission about how do you do the setup so that it allows for people to rest, people to take their equipment and put it somewhere in an orderly fashion so that it's not too chaotic. Then how do you also make provision for the crowd that will gather? Because people cannot see what's going on, they rely on rumor and all kinds of things. Oh, they are doing something, there's agitation outside. How do you set it up in a way that allows that people can get information even when they are outside? So I think the design of the collation center, and I think that's what you heard the IGB talk about, there will be some orderly system to make sure that everybody's role, there's no chaos.
I think this is a good point to bring in the intention of the EC to restrict the media access. Did you advise them that they should reduce the number of journalists at the collation center? Is that why they said what they said?
No, but I suspect that in trying to now look at how you set up the collation center, the issue about numbers, how many people can you, accredit into the space came up. But I mean, the easier solution is you engage all the media organizations, GIBA, PIMPRAG, GJA, media houses, to discuss what is the best way to do it. Because I think if you don't understand how the media operate, you might overestimate the you know, the representation across the country. A place like City and have all kinds of affiliates. In your setup, that's the same people you are working with. So in some region or district or constituency, it will be your affiliate that is probably representing you already. So when you have City, ChannelOne, it's the same group. So it's not like you are multiplying yourself plus your affiliates. And I think if they have had a discussion, they would understand how
so what do you, I think it's fair to ask you, so what do you make of, and it's moot now because they've reversed, but what do you think of that proposal by the EC to limit media access to the coalition?
No, I mean, I think, so one of the things that the EC itself has acknowledged is that it needs trusted sources to curb misinformation. So when you make a decision where, for example, you take out print media, graphic, GNA, and so on, these are the go-to places that people will go to if they are in doubt about some information. So you're already undermining your own, you know, setup. So I think that for me, the consultation would have helped. It will still be a question of numbers and how many people, but it could have been resolved by the media organizations themselves, and I'm glad that the process has been
Let's
resolved.
talk about the process leading up to now. So the compilation of the register, how it should be done, the exhibition.
Yes.
Are there things that you thought we could have done better in the build-up to this process?
Well, I think it started with the issue of how should we do the limited voter registration. That even started with the district level elections. We have been trying to have continuous registration for a long time, since 2020. It was one of the reform issues, but we never succeeded. Remember, the EC wanted to make the Ghana card as the sole, and people said, well, practically it's not going to work. And that sort of dragged that process. And then also the modalities. How are you going to do it? Are you going to have party agents there 24 hours with the Electoral Commission every single day? Even for observers, how would we observe the process? So we never concluded on the modalities and so on. But then when the EC said it was going to restrict it to its district offices, then there was issue about people may get disenfranchised. They extended it to include hard to reach areas and so on. So we kind of got over that. And then of course the exhibition issue came. NDC raised a number of issues. And that also dragged on for a while until we had that IPAC where everybody put their cards on the table and we moved forward on that side.
Is it a regrettable decision, you think, or it was a decision in the right order that we did not use the Ghana card as a source document for registration?
I think, you see, election issues are always very practical. Yes, that might be your desire, but it might be that what is the facts on the ground does not support the kind of decision you want to make. You might say, okay, we have a target that by 2025, 2027, we would have cleared and, you know, made everybody have their Ghana card and therefore move towards that process. But at the time that the EC wanted to do it, because they were worried about the guarantee system, it was premature. But the contradiction was that the Ghana card itself was using a guarantee system. So it's not like you have eliminated.
So the source document
itself, you know, and if you thought that the features for the Ghana card, in terms of how they use the guarantee system, they weren't doing I think 10 people, I think it was 5, and then you had to swear an affidavit before. Just adopt that process if that's what you thought to and then that would have taken care of it. So I think we're going to come back to that issue. But I mean, the rest, nomination, those who were disqualified, I think one went to court, it was dismissed, others decided not to challenge the process. We did re-exhibition for the first time. And again, we have to look at the law. How does it allow us to do
And we have a running exhibition where you can just use your phone to check.
Sure, exactly.
That one is still happening.
Exactly, but that doesn't alter the certified register. It just gives you information about whether or not you're on the register.
But you may not necessarily be able to vote on election day. What about this curious thing, and I'm not sure whether I should say curious, but bizarre thing where we are going to have a ballot paper with 13 people, but one of them is not alive. We're going to have a ballot paper with a dead person, and something we knew about a month before the election. I don't know what you think of that.
Well,
what if people end up voting for the dead person?
Well, and that could happen. But I think there are developments that have happened in this election where we have had to kind of build consensus, you know, because the legal provisions don't seem to give us a clear solution to it. So with Madam Mekuyadonko's matter, for instance, after we have printed 90% of the presidential ballots, this happens. Now people said, if this has happened to an MPP or an NDC candidate, we'll probably throw away and you know, because they will not accept that we should keep the whatever. At the end, IPAC, you know, sort of sat and said, oh, well, let's do it, you know, let's agree to still keep it on because we want to save costs and so on. But I don't think that will solve the problem in the future if it happened to a dominant party or so on.
So there should have been a way to deal with it and have a law.
Yeah, but I think the law, I think, is inadequate, and we need to find a solution to that problem. So we escaped because it happened to
a smaller party. Without agitation.
But if it happened to a bigger party, we'll be in trouble. So it definitely be one of the things that we have to look at going forward.
Very well. This is a face-to-face on ChannelOne television. I'm talking to Dr. Kojo Asante. Let's talk about the special voting now. It happened on the 2nd of December, but even before it happened, we were told Western Region and Eastern would not take part. And this is because of one of the many withdrawals the EC has had to do. Print cards, print ballots, withdraw them, voter region, we saw that Bono and all of those things. Now you're also preventing 2 regions from taking part in the special. It may be the first, I don't know, you have followed the elections. Is that a blot on our electoral process, or it rather shows that we are foolproof because we are seeing every mistake and fixing it as we go?
I mean, the more recent one, I have a different reservation. I have reservations about it. I think maybe the Electoral Commission was being too oversensitive because of also what had happened with the voter and so on and so forth. Because if the argument is that we found a defaced ballot paper somewhere in the streets, which had been, you know, designated for distraction, the only thing we needed to check is, does it come out of any of the completed, you know, ballot papers that we have? Does it have a serial number that is coming? So that we know whether or not actually what we have already sealed with the parties have put their seal on is contaminated, you know. But if it was a discarded ballot paper that was going to be burned and it happened to, you know, sort of be found somewhere, that should not automatically mean that we should throw away all of the 8 billion or whatever and start afresh. So I think that because of some of the things that are happening with voters and so on, maybe we are just being too sensitive about, and the immediate thing is, oh, let's just...
Could it be because the EC has been put on the edge? I mean,
yeah,
the scrutiny that the EC is being subjected to, so they don't want to fault.
Exactly, anyway. But I thought that we can all still be reasonable in that context and say, oh, does this one ballot that we found in town come up? Because even the last time they were burning, the wind could have just blown one. If, for example, on election day, you are walking and you see a defaced ballot that was supposed to have been destroyed, are we going to cancel the election?
No election
you know. So I think that it just shows that we have trust issues in the election, and we have to work on that. Otherwise, I think we will continue to overdo things. It will cost us money that we really don't need. You know.
So those 2 regions have not voted, but the remaining ones voted.
Yeah.
We've seen food being shared in a queue. We've heard that money is being given. We've seen people taking photos of their ballots. I need to assessment of that day.
So I think from our monitoring, and we're going to issue a report soon, but for our monitoring, at least in terms of the equipment working, most of the electoral procedures, all of that is fine. I think what you have identified is very worrying. I mean, it's worrying on many levels. The first thing is that most of the people participating in this special voting are law enforcement people. The idea that they themselves will accept
to break the law openly with impunity is very, very worrying. Then you have the parties, the party candidates and so on, who know what they're supposed to do and just deliberately violate the law without even having any remorse, you know, of what they are doing. And then what actually is also disturbing is that nobody who is supposed to take action, whether it's the electoral officials
or the police
took action.
Everybody just observed. Now, if you have this kind of situation on election day, it's chaos. So it's one of the things that we have to address very quickly. What are the instructions that have been given to law enforcement, who are the polling stations? If they see an electoral offense happening, what are they supposed to do? Or have they been told to just stand?
And some of this happen at the polling station?
Exactly.
At the police station?
At the police station. What are the instructions that have been given to presiding officers when they see that an actor is trying to interfere? Because if you are trying to interfere, it's an offense, an electoral offense. You cannot be going people in a queue and dishing out or even trying to talk to them. Campaigning is supposed to stop 24 hours before the election. So what are they doing? Go in the queue and engaging people.
How can we fix that now? Where should the fixing come from? Should there be arrest? Should there be a circular that says this should not happen again? How do we deal with it?
A couple of things. So both on the Electoral Commission side, in terms of what the instructions are to presiding officers, so that we also can observe when we go and we see what are the poll workers supposed to do when these things are happening. From the National Election Security Task Force, what are the instructions to law enforcement that are supposed to be there? Are they supposed to call rapid response to come? What are the instructions? Because it might be the case, there has to be a protocol so that that offense is immediately arrested, you know. And what has happened, certainly there are offenses that have been committed. And I heard the special prosecutor said they are investigating. People need to be called in and questioned because the video, there's enough information out there. If there is no accountability, I can imagine on election day, I was shocked. I mean, for law enforcement, media people, because there was even suggestion that media people taking pictures of their and going somewhere to get, I mean,
to collect no
I think that is a very low point.
But maybe it's a small number of voters, so you can bribe them. Maybe if 80 million you cannot bribe.
So it's not even a question of capacity or skill. I think it's the people involved, because these are supposed to be the watchdogs.
It shouldn't have happened.
It shouldn't have happened.
This is Face to Face, Channel 1 Television. My name is Umaru, Sanda, Amadu. Dr. Kojo Asante is my guest. When we come back, the integrity of election 2024 on Saturday. We are called the beacon of democracy on the continent. Can we live up to that name? What should we do to live up to that name? He has covered elections both in Ghana and other places. He knows what we should get right. And also the transfer of power, the transition, and all of those things. We have a long day ahead and a long month ahead, don't we? Stay with us. Yeah, welcome back. This is Face to Face. Doc, so on Saturday, December 7, 2024, maybe we may not be the United States, so not the whole world will be watching. But I think the whole world will be watching still to see how Ghana is going to come out of this. We have changed, I mean, we have had elections 8 times. This will be the 9th time we are holding elections since we returned to democratic rule. Is it the case that because we have done it 8 times, there's no way there's going to be a problem? We are going to be fine on election day 2024. Are we going to be fine?
I think we'll be fine. But
how can we be fine? What do we have to do?
I think all elections that I've been involved in, and I think this will be my 5th or 6th, I have to check. But it's organizations like ours, like what the media does, you know, what other stakeholders do, is what makes sure that, you know, we all come out of this peacefully. So it's never dependent on one person. Elections always been about stakeholders. So what the Election Security Task Force does, what the Army does, you know, what you do, and so on. So, and then when I see that we are working very hard to ensure peaceful elections, that gives me the confidence that we'll be able to come through this. Doesn't mean that we won't have challenges. But I mean, Ghana's election is important, as you said, in many, many, many ways. I mean, this year has been the year of elections, and it's probably one of the ones that will end it, right? But for the sub-region, it's important. Senegal has shown the way, you know, and when Ghana also overcomes that, Ghana has always been a reference point for a lot of West Africans if they see Ghana's democratic experiment continue, they have the optimism that in spite of the challenges of democratic recession, they would still be able to, triumph eventually. So I think it's key, that we overcome. I mean, for our own selves, people are frustrated. Some people think they don't have a choice. Some people say they won't vote, all of that. After 16 years of MPP, 16 years of NDC, there's a lot of evaluation and reflection that's going on. But at the minimum, to keep the wheels of democracy going, we still have to elect a government.
For someone who says, listen, I've seen 16 years NDC, 16 years MPP, I'm tired, I won't vote. What would be your advice?
We'll say, well, the other candidates, why don't they try the other candidates that are on the ballot?
What if they say, look, the whole democracy now is a tiring...
well, if you don't vote, somebody will still make a decision for you. And I think you are better off saying, at least I made my decision. And if it doesn't go my way, at least I am responsible for that. But if you hand over that responsibility to somebody else, you can't complain later.
What about security on election day? So the Ghana Armed Forces has issued a statement saying there will be no soldiers at the polling station. Yes. It's awesome. But then again, remember what happened in 2020? Exactly. There were gunshots. People were injured. People were killed. Yeah. We have not seen a solution to that. 8 people who died.
That's right.
Moving into this election, how confident are you that we're not going to see the level of violence and the killings that we saw in the past?
We have always made the case that that issue of making it clear how the army is going to play its role. The polling station, I think we all agree that that's not going to happen. The last time was the collation center where we saw that for me, the army is not equipped for crowd control, and it's something the police should handle. And more territorial integrity issues, and they come and support if that's the case. Because the army is set up to shoot and kill, neutralize, and so on. And that's where some of the issues happen with the 2020. Yeah. So to avoid fatalities, those kind of arrangements have to be done to make sure that they are not at the forefront trying to
So take out the soldiers completely or keep them on standby?
Oh, I think the statement made it clear that they would act on the advice of the police if they are needed. The only thing is that, as we've said, as part of the unified command, as much as possible, they don't deploy their SOPs, their standard operating procedures, which is, as I said, neutralized when they come into the scene, because then that already will contribute to fatalities. So that's one of the areas we have to watch. But I'm really happy about the clarification that was made from the army itself, because we have been asking for that for a long time. So that, for me, I've never worried so much about violence from the general public, because most people are law-abiding. They want to, but they need clarity. If I go there, this is how things are going to be. If I follow these rules, I go home safe, peaceful, and all of that. That's what we have to keep encouraging. As for miscreants and people who want to cause trouble, there's enough security to deal with that problem. And then we also ask the parties whose whole objective is that they want to come and serve us, and that's why they are doing all of this, to also comport themselves and follow the rules. If you don't understand it, seek clarification now so that we are all very clear when we get there. Are you very confident, and this is my concluding question, that on January 7 next year, we would have gone through a proper and safe and smooth and peaceful transition? Are things looking so for you? As I said, for me, that's my expectation, and that's what I work towards. And all the time that we have managed to get there is because all of us who are involved in this electoral process are committed to that objective. And no matter the challenges that come, we will work at it to make sure that we have a smooth transition and post-election, a peaceful election at the end. Thank you so much, Doc, for speaking to us. We'll call you on election day and ask you who has won. You whisper it into our ears. We'll decide whether to tell people or not. But since you will be getting to know about it ahead of time, please share with us. You will not find me. Oh. So that's Dr. Kojo from Asante. He's wearing 2 caps. He's Director of Policy Engagement and Partnerships with the Center for Democratic Development, CDD. He's also the Director of the CODEO Secretariat at CDD. He was my guest on Face to Face. My name is Umaru, Sanda, Amadu. I'm with ChannelOne Television and CTFM. We wish Ghanaians a peaceful election, and please go out there and vote for your preferred candidate
and pray and hope that that candidate wins. But if that candidate does not win, just stay cute and stay in your room, possibly get some drink and enjoy some nice reggae music. If your candidate wins too, you can celebrate, but do so in modesty. Do not taunt other persons who belong to parties that have lost. Thank you so much for being with us. This is the Election Bureau. It's been great serving you throughout the year leading up to this election. Thank you for joining us.